7 Halloween Tales. Halloween Tale Number 1. The Abandoned Factory. 4 girls were walking home from a Halloween party in 2002. They were walking by an old abandoned factory that stood next to a field. The factory was said to be haunted, and many people in the area refused to set foot inside the factory grounds. When they got to the middle of the field, one of the girls said it would be fun to explore the old factory. The other girls were scared at first, but eventually one of them agreed to do it just for fun so they could tell their friends at school about it. 2 of the girls climbed over the fence and the other 2 girls waited outside for them. After about 20 minutes had passed, the 2 remaining girls started getting worried. Suddenly, they heard blood-curdling screams coming from inside the old factory. It sounded like their friends. Terrified, the 2 girls ran all the way home. The 2 girls who went into the factory were never seen again. Today, the factory still stands. They say that if you dare to enter the grounds on Halloween night, then you too will vanish, never to be seen again. Halloween Tale Number 2. The Bus Driver. On a dark Halloween night in 2003, a bus driver was traveling down a deserted street when he saw a beautiful young woman at the side of the road. He halted at the bus stop and she climbed on board. The woman took a seat at the back of the bus and stared straight ahead. When the bus driver looked in his mirror, he noticed that the woman was staring directly at him, never blinking. But when he looked back over his shoulder, the woman was sitting with her back to him. The driver began to get really creeped out. He couldn't understand what was going on. Then, he came to the end of his route. It was the last stop and he pulled over and opened the doors of the bus. The woman didn't get out. She just sat there, motionless, with her back to him. The driver walked towards the back of the bus and saw that the woman was covering her face with her hands. He tried talking to her, but she wouldn't answer. He took hold of her arms and tried to make her show her face. The woman refused and struggled out of his grip. Finally, she spoke. "You will not like what you see," and suddenly, she dropped her hands and turned. Her face was horribly disfigured. Lumps of flesh were falling off and her skeletal face could be seen beneath. It is said that they found the bus driver the next morning, lying unconscious outside the bus. He spent 2 weeks in a coma, and when he awoke, he had lost all control of his senses. They put him in a mental institution, and this is the story he told from his cell. Halloween Tale Number 3. Cemetery Garlands. It was Halloween night in 2004 and a young boy was being picked on by his brother and some older kids from school. They dared the young boy to go into the graveyard at midnight with a bunch of garlands and place one on each of the gravestones. Not wanting them to think he was a coward, the young boy accepted the challenge. It was a moonless night and the inside of the cemetery was pitch black. The rusty gates of the cemetery opened with a creak and the boy cautiously entered. He looks at his watch. It was midnight. The witching hour. Clutching the garlands tightly, he made his way to the middle of the graveyard. He was shaking with fear, but he tried to steady his nerves. He was afraid that if he returned without completing the task, the older boys would laugh at him. Moving slowly through the cemetery, he got the distinct feeling that someone or something was watching him. Finally, he managed to place each garland on a gravestone and his task was complete. "Well, that's all of them," he whispered to himself. Just then, he felt a cold hand on his shoulder as a voice hissed, "You forgot mine." Halloween Tale Number 4. The Black Diamonds. One Halloween night in 2005, a 16-year-old girl named May and her friends, Irene, Kate, and Leslie, were out driving to a Halloween party outside of town. So, of course, they took the freeway. The car was slowing down, like it was running out of gas, but the meter said it was full. May and Leslie went to check out the engine. When they opened the hood, there was a hand. A lone bare hand. They were so frightened they couldn't scream. Leslie reached out to touch it, then it moved. This time they both screamed and Irene and Kate ran out the car screaming. They said there was a man with his flesh torn and a missing hand in the back seat. The girls ran and the car was chasing them slowly. May called her parents and Irene called 911 on their cellular phones as they ran. But when the cops and May's parents came, all 4 girls were soaking in blood. Not their own blood. The cops found a black gemstone, unidentified, in the driver's seat, covered with blood. The girls went ahead to the party. The address was just a vacant lot, but in that vacant lot were many bloody, black, unidentified gemstones. Halloween tale number 5. The Man in the Mask. On Halloween in 2006, my family and I went into the city because my mom had bought a car and she needed to make a car payment to the dealer. We decided to take my little sister and her friend trick-or-treating out there. My mom made her payment and my sister and her friend were trick-or-treating. It was getting late, so we decided that was enough. We had a long drive back home. We ate at a fast food burger joint and began the long drive home. When we were on the freeway, a car was driving right next to us and the driver was wearing a mask, staring right at us. Everybody started to get scared. He was keeping up with us and had his head turned sideways, staring for about 10 minutes. Then he just turned and looked ahead and drove past us. A year later, in 2007, I was driving home one night. Again, it was Halloween. I was with my little brother whom I took trick-or-treating. We stopped to get something to eat, and we were on a freeway with lots of other cars. One happened to pull up beside us while we going about 60 miles per hour. It was a guy in a ski mask. He just stared at us for 10 minutes without even turning head. And we were going fast too. Finally, he turned his head and sped up past us to the next victim. Halloween tale number 6. Mass murder. On Halloween night in 2008, there was a mass murder. The police were called and 2 homicide detectives went to investigate the horrible crime. Trying not to tread on the bodies, the police took pictures of each one. One policeman saw something on the opposite wall, but he couldn't read it. He walks over to it and sees what looked like the numbers 7734 written in blood. When taking pictures of this, he turned his digital camera upside down and showed it to his partner. When he pointed with the hand that the camera was in, he accidentally took a picture of the upside-down numbers. The policeman was about to delete the picture when he realized something. The numbers were now a word. The word was hell. Halloween story number 7. Trick gone wrong. On Halloween in 2009, 2 boys wanted to play a prank on the people in their neighborhood. There was a small road that ran right next to the cemetery. They decided to climb 2 trees that stood opposite each other. Then they both held either end of a fishing line and stretched it across the path. When someone came walking down the path, the boys pulled the fishing line tight and it would know the hat off anyone who was passing by. Their first victim came down the path and they pulled the fishing line. The man's hat was knocked off and he ran away, terrified. Pleased that their prank had worked, they decided to do it again. They saw a tall black shadow approaching and lay in wait. The kids got ready and when the shadow passed, they pulled on the fishing line with all their might. Then they heard a ripping noise and saw a severed head rolling along the ground.